Shields up, Iron Breakers. Rurikhan here coming at you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Vampyr, which, to be completely honest, I could have sworn that this is supposed to be pronounced Vampyr, but I saw a developer blog or something where they talked about this game and they called it Vampyr, so I guess I'm going to be going with that. Anyway, this title was sent to me by Focus Interactive so that I could give it a look and tell you guys my opinions on it. Let's get started. This right here is a game that has me extremely conflicted, and I should preface this by saying that everything that I will say on this video is going to be based on the PlayStation 4 version of the game, because that is the version that I requested so that I could do an analysis on it and give you guys my opinions on it, because I play most of my games on the PlayStation 4, and therefore it's just more convenient for me that way. Having said that, I gotta tell you guys, when it comes to the PlayStation 4 version, from a technical standpoint, this game is a little rough around the edges. As a matter of fact, I don't even think that the game is running native 1080p. Now, I cannot confirm this 100% because I don't have access to the same tools as Digital Foundry. However, it definitely does not feel like it. And on top of that, they're also using that grainy filter that people like to put on games to give it a more filmic look. And I wish I could turn that off, because that even makes it harder for me to judge just how good or not good the visuals are on the PS4. It almost seems like the grain filter was put in there not for the filmic look, but to actually make it so that the visuals don't look as bad. So that right there has been a big disappointment for me. But on top of that, there's even another thing, which is, okay, so the visuals aren't that great. How good does it run? Well, it runs 30 FPS, and sometimes it runs even a little bit lower than 30 FPS, which is an even bigger problem, because, like, look, okay, I get it. You're not a big studio. I believe that this game was developed by, like, 80 people or something. It's not a huge studio. I get it, but, like, look, if your game does not have visuals that are going to blow people away, at least make it so that it runs 60 FPS. You know, there's got to be some kind of compromise here, because, I mean, you either get really good visuals or you get really good performance. At least that's the way that I like to look at things, which is why I like, if the game looked the way that it looks, but it ran at 60 FPS, I'd be like, okay, this is fine. The problem is that the game looks the way it looks and runs at 30 FPS, which is why, again, from a technical perspective, I am not impressed in the slightest. As a matter of fact, if you are really interested in Vampyr and you have a PC that is powerful enough to run it, that would be my first advice to you. Try to look into the PC version, see if that is looking better than the PlayStation 4 version, and potentially get that version instead, because the game just doesn't run very well on the PS4. In terms of sound, I don't really have that many complaints. I mean, the sound effects are all right. The soundtrack, even though it's not something that I'm super into, I can say that it is definitely adequate for what the game is trying to do. And in terms of dialogue, I actually think the game is really good, because every single line in the game is voiced by an actor. And so far, from what I've played, and I've played about 6 or 7 hours up until this point, I've enjoyed every conversation that I had in the game. I think the voice acting is pretty good, which is a good thing, because most of the time that I've spent playing the game so far has actually been spent in dialogue with other characters, learning about them, learning about their relationship with other characters and events that are taking place in the game that kind of like progress the story forward, but also give the world much more depth than just me going out and starting to kill monsters. For those of you that are not aware, this game is actually developed by the same developers that brought us Life is Strange. Therefore, you can expect quite a bit of depth when it comes to character interaction, whether it be in the form of dialogues or actions that you take or decisions that you make in game, and you can expect those decisions to have some very meaningful consequences. As a matter of fact, I would say that this game is much more focused around the dialogue and the choices that you make as a character than necessarily in combat or anything of that nature. To give you guys an idea, there's actually a section of the game's UI that is just dedicated to listing off all of the NPCs that you have met throughout the game's world so far, and show you in which borough you've met them, so that you can kind of like see what their quirks are, and you can decide whether those are NPCs that you want to help or if those are NPCs that you want to kill. And that right there is one of the things that makes me extremely conflicted because, like I said earlier in the video, from a technical standpoint, the PlayStation 4 version of this game is a bit of a mess. But then when you get down to the gameplay and the types of things that you can do and the things that the developers are trying to go for, I actually really, really like it. Like the simple fact that you can kill any NPC that you want, but it's not just the fact of going up to the NPC and starting to attack them. No, there's much more depth to the mechanic than that. You have to learn about the NPC, and then you have to get something which is called a mesmerized level. And I gotta be completely honest, up until this point in my playthrough, I haven't really killed anyone yet, but the reasoning behind that is because I've already picked a couple of characters that I want to kill, but I want to like max out how much experience I'm gonna get by killing them. And that is a mechanic in the game because you actually have to get to know these characters.
Tell me, who are you?
First, tell me what you want. Then I may tell you.
You have to know their quirks, you have to learn their secrets, and the more you know about them, when you finally decide to kill them or embrace them, as the game says, you are going to gain more experience. So it kind of becomes a bit of a min-max thing. Now, that's not the only reason why I'm doing that. I'm not just like, oh, I want to make sure that I fatten up this pig before I kill it. It's more like I'm actually curious to see how much of it actually pays off, you know, actually learning everything that I can about some of the characters. And I gotta tell you guys, so far I've been fascinated with some of the dialogues that I've had and how they kind of like interweave and then connect to other characters. There's like this rich web, this rich narrative web in the game where you're talking to one character and then you figure out, okay, this character is related to this other character in this way, and that opens up new dialogue options to go talk with the other character. Then you go to the other character and he might open up dialogue options to the previous one or to a completely different unrelated character. And basically the more you talk with them, the more you unravel some of the events that have taken place, the more you learn about the characters themselves, and the more you begin to form an idea of who this character is so that you can make the decision of whether or not you want to kill them. And again, when you decide that you want to kill them, it becomes a bit of a dance. You have to actually use this mesmerized thing to lure them away from other people, and then you can like embrace them and you will gain a chunk of experience. And that's another interesting mechanic that they've placed in the game, because when I started playing the game, they actually instantly say right before you begin playing, they say, okay, this game gets easier the more people you kill. That's how you regulate the difficulty. There's no difficulty slider. It's just like, look, the more people you kill, the easier the game is going to get, because you're going to get chunks of XP, and therefore you'll be able to level up more. But this brings us to another problem, which again is another one of the reasons why I'm conflicted. And the problem is, up until this point, I haven't killed anyone, and the game still feels pretty damn easy. To put you guys into perspective, enemies have levels in this game, very much like your character has a level, and you can see the level of any enemy that you are fighting. And when I was level 6, I was dispatching enemies that were level 16, which is supposed to be really hard, and I wasn't really having that much of a problem with it. And then I eventually decided, okay, I found a weapon that I like. I'm going to upgrade this weapon because the game has like a crafting and an upgrade system where you get to craft all kinds of stuff. But one of the things that you can do is you can upgrade your weapon, and you naturally get to level up your character with powers, and you get to increase certain things, like maybe your blood powers as a vampire, or you get to increase your stamina, your health pool, your blood gauge. You get to increase all kinds of stuff. So when I finally did a bit min-maxing was when I was at level 6. And I basically was able to level myself up to level 10 because I hadn't leveled up in a long time. Because like I said, at level 6, I was killing level 16 enemies without much of a problem. So when I got to level 10 with a weapon that I wanted and I upgraded the weapon, pretty much I've destroyed everything the game's thrown at me since. Like, I think the highest thing that I found was this level 19 boss or something, and I just beat his face in, no problem whatsoever, which I was like, I mean, if the game is this easy without me killing anyone, I can't even imagine how much easier it would get if I was to just like slaughter everyone that I could have slaughtered so far to gain additional experience and make myself even more powerful. Again, you go back to the thing where I said, I'm very conflicted. Since I just touched up on combat, I figured I'd tell you guys how combat actually works. You guys can see on the top left-hand side, we have our health gauge. Beneath it, you have the stamina gauge, and immediately below it, you have a blood gauge. Now, The health is for your hit points, so when you get hit, you're going to take damage. That's going to diminish. If it gets to 0, you die. Your stamina is pretty much any action that you perform, so like a melee attack or a dodge is going to consume stamina. Running also consumes stamina. And then you have the blood gauge, which is for your vampiric spells, which in my case, the only vampiric spell, the offensive vampiric spell that you guys are going to be seeing is the Claw, which is basically a big melee attack that you can do that deals a ton of damage. There are more vampire spells. There's like this spear and there's this AoE spell that you can do, and there's even ultimate spells that I haven't unlocked yet, so I still don't know exactly what the mechanics are for the ultimate spells. But basically, whenever you cast one of those spells, you're going to use up your blood gauge. And the way that combat kind of flows is that you guys can see that the enemies, they have their own health gauges, and below them, they have what is essentially a stun gauge. So if you hit enemies with attacks that are stunning, you will stun your enemy will fall down, at which point you can kind of like grab him and suck blood out of him. That blood goes into your blood gauge, which then allows you to do, your special vampire attacks. So if you need blood, you're going to want to stun your enemies and then drain some life out of them. Or if you just want to kill them, use your spells, kill them faster, or use your melee attacks and kill them that way. As you progress throughout the game and you choose what kind of weapons you want to focus on, you're going to start having like edged weapons and then some more blunt weapons. I think that for the majority of this video, you're either going to see me use a hacksaw, which is a bladed weapon, or a big two-handed mace, which is naturally a blunt weapon. Blunt weapons, you're able to eventually upgrade them to deal additional stunning damage, whereas bladed weapons, you're able to upgrade them to actually steal blood from your enemies. You're able to dual-wield melee weapons, one-wield one weapon, and then have a gun on the other hand, or two-hand weapons. And depending on how you wield weapons, you're going to get different strategies. Like, for instance, you're able to use a hacksaw on one weapon and then a stake on the other. The stake is going to deal stunning damage, whereas the hacksaw is going to deal actual damage. That's one way to do it. Or you can two-hand the big mace like what I'm doing, which basically deals regular damage as well as stun damage. Or you can, I'm assuming, eventually wield like a big-ass axe, which is going to deal damage as well as steal blood from your enemies. Or you can just shoot people down with guns. I'm not sure if you actually get like a main hand gun. So far, I've only gotten them for offhands. It almost feels like Bloodborne a little bit, but guns are essentially used for dealing damage. They don't really do stuns or anything of that nature. There is a parry mechanic when you have a two-handed weapon, but that's about it, from what I've seen so far. The combat actually feels pretty good if it wasn't for the fact that it's also extremely easy for the most part from what I've experienced so far. Sometimes you might get a boss that has a little bit more health than what you were expecting, but at the same time, all you gotta do is dodge appropriately and it's not really a big problem. As well as the fact that you have a couple of enemies that have some AI issues. Like at one point, I was hiding behind a railing, like they should be able to see me, and the characters would actually not engage my character, and I was able to essentially leash them one at a time and kill them one at a time, which was a little bit disappointing. I was like, come on, get these guys to all attack me at once. Don't let me just like, exploit the game like this. I'm not even trying at this point, That was a bit of a disappointment when we came to the combat. I hope that is something that they can patch in and, up the difficulty a little bit, or at least give us a couple of difficulty options. Like, I get what you're going for with the whole thing. Hey, you kill more characters, the game gets easier, but it's like, right now the game feels way too easy even if you don't kill anyone, okay? At least in my opinion. You gotta either give us an additional difficulty setting, or I don't know, but something else, it can't be this easy. But then again, like I said, I've only played 7 hours up until this point, so maybe it gets harder later down the line, but I've also spent most of my time speaking with characters because I found that particular aspect of the game extremely engaging. Even though the game isn't really a traditional open world game, I have to say that I really like what they're doing in terms of their world, which is essentially you have this set of burrows that you've been through, and you can kind of monitor the progress of all of the NPCs that are in that area. And since your character is essentially a doctor, you're able to actually brew these concoctions that will actually be able to heal people. Like you can do like cold medicine, you can do medicine to treat fatigue, you can do medicine to treat all sorts of ailments, and you can actually treat some of these NPCs, and doing so increases the quality of their blood so that you can then kill them. But I believe that healing certain NPCs also contributes to a greater overall purpose within each of the burrows. It increases the health status of those burrows because you have different types of health status, which I believe that if you start killing off these NPCs willy-nilly, you know, stuff is going to go bad in those places, and you're probably more monsters showing up throughout the different sections of the game. And that is an interesting mechanic. You know, it's better than just having an open world that's just a checklist. You know, there's choice and consequence going on here that I find interesting on a deeper level than just having a big world. The world, from what I've seen so far, is not huge, but it is detailed. And you do have stuff to do wherever you go. And that, to me, is more important than having a massive map and a big old checklist of things that you can do. You do have side quests, but you get to choose, okay, I want to invest in this side quest because it's going to open up something for this character, which is a character that I'm interested in seeing what happens next. So there's plenty of stuff for the completionists to do, but it doesn't feel meaningless, again, from what I've played of the game so far. When it comes to the story so far, it's been pretty interesting for the most part. Like I said, I've actually spent most of my time engaging characters in dialogue. For those of you that don't know, this takes place during the Spanish flu epidemic in London, which is not a time period that I'm particularly familiar with because I've never been too much of a history buff, but it does provide an interesting setting for a lot of the stories that are being told. My main complaint, and once again, we're going to go into why I'm so conflicted about this game. It's like, there's so many things I like about it, and then there's always something that kind of like holds it back. And my main complaint is actually the very start of the game, because it kind of makes it hard for me to invest myself into this character, because again, I'm going to try to describe this in the least spoilery way possible. I'm pretty sure that all of this is mentioned in the trailers, but like, your character is a doctor. He's a physician. He fought in the war and he was killed, and now he became a vampire, right? Everybody knows that. That's your character's background, which is why you're a doctor and you can create medicine for people and you can heal them and whatnot. And ultimately, at the very start of the game, there's this very tragic event that takes place. Okay, and again, I'm not going to go into details or specifics, but there's a very tragic event that takes place that kind of sets your character on this path that he is going, which is a little bit of a path of revenge, so to speak. But it's like, he instantly is just like, okay, I'm ready, just going to go have my vengeance. I'm going to go about my business having my vengeance. Like, your character never actually expresses his, like, sure, he does it super early in the game and then just like never mentions it again, instantly moves on. It feels like he goes from being completely torn apart by what happens early in the game to just like, nope, just business as usual. I'm just going about my daily life. It feels very weird. There's a bit of a disconnect at the very start of the game. But if you can look past that, like I personally have, there's still a lot of enjoyable story to have. And maybe, who knows, there's a payoff later down in the game. Again, I'm sorry that I can't actually say more than what I've said in this video because I only received the copy today, and it's probably my fault because I was very late in requesting the copy, so I'm sorry, but these are my opinions on the game so far. It's like, I'm conflicted because technically it's not great, but it has cool gameplay, but then it feels too easy, but it's got all of these interesting things going on with the NPCs that you can kill and that you can decide not to kill, that you can help or that you can not help. So there's a lot of interesting things at play with Vampyr, but they all seem to be held back from greatness because there's always something else that kind of like gets in the way a little bit. I really wish that at the very least they would patch the game to make it a little bit more challenging and improve the performance on the PlayStation 4, and I would be much happier recommending this game. As it is right now, I gotta say, if you can get it on the PC, that might be an alternative. Make sure to check videos on it of people that are playing on the PC to make sure that it doesn't have any performance issues. But other than that, I enjoy the game quite a bit, but it's just like I said, it's conflicting, you know? When you're enjoying it, you're really liking it, but then you can also see, oh, but the visuals and the technical aspect, oh, and then you're like, oh, but the combat's so much fun, oh, but it's so easy, you know? It's so conflicting. I don't know what else to say. I really don't. If you guys enjoy my videos, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, all of that stuff. Leave me all your comments and feedback in the comment section below. If you guys have questions regarding the game, make sure to ask them. I'll be sure to answer as fast as I possibly can. Thank you very much for watching. At this point in the video, there will probably be an end slate with 2 video suggestions that you guys can check out if you are interested. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one.